to hijack this process somehow. Wow, that's everything that's happening in Africa. Exciting, exciting times ahead. When I come back, let's look at, traveling in Africa for African Americans. Where can you go? Where can you not go? What is required? Awesome, awesome news right after this. Welcome back to a special edition of the Dr. Mumbi Show for the Advise Media Network. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. Sometimes mainstream media doesn't want to let you know what's really happening on the continent, but with this partnership, we're building bridges. Yes, I'm reporting directly from Nairobi, Kenya, building bridges with the Advise Media Network, building bridges with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora and particularly in the U.S. So much is happening in Africa. There's a lot of shifting and moving. The chess pieces are moving around. There's a lot of good and there's some bad that's happening, but we really have to keep an eye out. Now, a lot of, one of the things I've been saying is that more and more and more African Americans need to visit Africa, at least come for a trip, start investing in the continent, because that's the only way we'll build bridges. And one thing that you guys need to know is that there are at least 20 countries in Africa where you as an African American can travel visa free. As in, you just get your passport and hop on over here. Now, one thing I figured out, the only good thing about your white supremacist country, if I can say that, is how strong the passport is. The American passport is the third strongest passport in the world, which means there's a lot of places where you can travel to without a visa, and life is made easier once you show that passport. And it also means that even when you're on the continent, because it's not every nation is safe, let me just keep it 100, but with that passport, at least there is some security that comes with it. So I really, really want to encourage you guys, get your passports. And Asabi wrote on my comments, and he was really woke, he was really schooled, and he was just like, encourage your African American brothers and sisters to get their passports before October. I don't know what's happening in October, I don't want to be an alarmist, but guys, get your passports. I don't know what the procedure is, but get your passports. Get your children passports. Get your mama passports. Get your grandmama passports, because there's a shift that's happening on the global scale, and you want to be ready. Now, okay, so there's 20 countries, and you can see them being listed there. We're just going to be running them there, so you can have a look where you can visit, and you can stay for a maximum of 180 days in some nations. In other nations, you can stay for a maximum of 3 months or 90 days. And basically, some of the things that you'd be required to have is like an international vaccine card. Some require that your passport be valid for at least 6 months. Others require that you actually the majority of nations require that you have a return ticket, or you show that you will be, how you'll be going back. Others require that you at least carry with you, either passport or visa photos, so that because some require you can get a stamp on entry, etc. Financial proof. So what would be required mainly is for you to show that you have the finances to stay for however long you plan to stay, whether it's a week, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it's 2 months, show, proof of accommodation, etc. Others would require that you also show, what is it? You also have like pages in your passport that are available. So those are what mainly the free, where you're the visa free nations, that's what require. But the biggest thing that's required is the vaccination card. And there's different, there's right now, guys are digital, so you can actually go online and figure out, if I want to go to Uganda, or if I want to come to Kenya, or if I want to go to Senegal, what kind of vaccines would I need? I know here in Kenya you need to have like the hepatitis B, hepatitis C, malaria, because there are some regions where malaria is prevalent. There, it's not really a vaccine, but you might need to take some malaria medication before you come here or while you're here or when you go back, etc. But one of the